The biological clock of ambition is not a social construct or a midlife crisis arrived early. It is a neurological hard stop. Around age 30, the human brain undergoes its final stage of structural maturation, the full myelination of the prefrontal cortex, marking the end of the exploration phase and the violent onset of the optimization phase. This is the great realignment, a period where the infinite potential of your 20s is traded for the cold, hard reality of path dependency. We are drawn to this transition because it represents the first time the human animal realizes that time is a finite resource, triggering a total audit of one's life, career, and legacy. You're no longer playing with house money. Every bet you place now is with your own life's equity. In your 20s, your brain is a high-plasticity machine designed for broad-spectrum acquisition. You are biologically incentivized to say yes to everything: unstable jobs, toxic relationships, and aimless travel, because the cost of failure is perceived as zero. However, as you cross the threshold of 30, the dopaminergic reward system shifts. The novelty of trying new things loses its neurochemical kick, replaced by a desperate craving for competence and status. This is the amortization of identity. You realize that every year you spend in a placeholder career is a year you are not compounding interest in your true calling. The biological clock of ambition begins to tick louder because the brain starts calculating the return on effort. You stop asking, "What could I be?" and start panicking over, "What am I actually becoming?" This internal pressure is a great realignment, forcing you to narrow your focus or risk permanent mediocrity. At 30, the status asymmetry within your peer group becomes impossible to ignore. In your 20s, everyone is broke and figuring it out. By 30, the herd has split. You see some peers achieving hyperscale success, while others remain in a state of extended adolescence. This triggers a primal Darwinian alarm. Because we are tribal animals, our sense of safety is tied to our relative rank. The realignment is a status audit. If you are not in the top tier of your tribe by this age, your biology interprets this as a threat to your future resource security. This isn't just keeping up with the Joneses. It is a survival drive. The ambition you feel at 30 is sharper and more aggressive than the ambition of your 20s because it is fueled by loss aversion. You aren't playing to win anymore. You are playing to avoid being left behind in the lower tier of the social strata. The great realignment is also a confrontation with sunk costs. By 30, you have invested significant time into a version of yourself that may no longer be viable. The sovereign individual realizes that age 30 is the last window for a structural pivot. If you are in the wrong career or the wrong city, the friction of changing paths increases exponentially after this point due to the institutionalization of the self, the mortgages, the social obligations, and the reputation you built. Those who survive the realignment are those who can perform a psychological autopsy on their own lives. They cut the zombie projects, the dreams they held onto out of habit rather than passion. They realize that sovereignty requires specialized mastery. The jack of all trades is a 20-something archetype. The 30-something archetype is the specialist. You are biologically pushed to find your edge and double down on it, moving from a generalist consumer to a niche producer. As the clock ticks, the brain begins to prioritize generativity, the desire to create something that outlasts the self. This is the legacy drive. Ambition at 30 shifts from being egocentric to being structure-centric. We are drawn to this shift because it provides a sense of existential weight. We start to value reliability over possibility. We seek hard power, the kind of influence that comes from owning assets, holding authority, and having a defined place in the world. The great realignment is the moment you stop being a guest in the world and start trying to be an owner. Those who fail to make this transition often fall into a permanent crisis, trying to use the tools of a 20-year-old to solve the problems of a 30-year-old. Furthermore, the neurobiology of fear changes. In your youth, the amygdala is tempered by an almost reckless optimism. By 30, the risk assessment loops become more sophisticated and punishing. You begin to see the floor of your life. The fear of ending up as a cautionary tale becomes a more powerful motivator than the hope of becoming a success story. This is the poverty of time setting in. You realize you likely only have 2 or 3 major cycles of career or life building left before your energy levels begin their natural decline. This leads to the ruthless pruning of social circles. You no longer have the bandwidth for low-resolution relationships. You seek out high-value networks that offer force multiplication for your ambitions. The legacy architecture of the 30s also involves a shift from horizontal learning to vertical mastery. You stop collecting skills like a hobbyist and start weaponizing them like a professional. You understand that the world doesn't reward the person who knows a little bit about everything. It rewards a person who can solve a specific, high-stakes problem better than anyone else. This is the apex realization. Your value is not determined by your effort, but by your scarcity. The great realignment is the process of making yourself unreplaceable. It is a transition from the labor class of the mind to the capital class of the spirit, where you are no longer selling your hours, but your judgment. We must also address the metabolic reality of ambition. Your physical capacity for grinding starts to find its limits. You can no longer survive on 4 hours of sleep and caffeine alone without systemic breakdown. This forces a shift from brute force to strategic leverage. You learn to delegate, to automate, and to say no to low-leverage opportunities. The ambition of the 30s is about efficiency. It is to work smarter, not harder, cliché turned into a survival mandate. You are building systems that work for you, rather than being the fuel for someone else's system. If you haven't built a leverage engine by 35, you risk being ground down by the sheer friction of existence. Ultimately, the great realignment is an exit from the simulation. In your 20s, you're living in a tutorial mode where mistakes are easily reset. At 30, the permadeath mechanics of real life become visible. Every choice has a compound interest effect, either for your freedom or for your imprisonment. The biological clock of ambition is the alarm clock that wakes you up to the fact that you are the protagonist of a story with a finite number of pages. You stop playing for the crowd and start playing for the finish line. It is the most honest, brutal, and productive decade of human life, provided you have the courage to face the mirror of results and act accordingly. To master this transition, the sovereign individual must perform a hard reset on expectations. You must kill the promising young man-woman archetype and replace it with the proven executioner. Results are the only currency that matters in the optimization phase. Stop talking about your potential. It is a liability that suggests you haven't done anything yet. Start talking about your infrastructure. The great realignment is the bridge between being a dreamer and being a founder of your own reality.